Many people in my life are excited for Stranger Things to return for its final season, so I figured I would take a look at Finn Wolfhard's directorial debut, Hell of a Summer. I'm not a Stranger Things head, so I don't have any bias in favor of him, but what does that mean I thought of a Hell of a Summer? Well, let's dive right into it. Hello, my name is Sean Morgan and I love movies. I especially love horror movies and was excited to check this one out as it was sold as a love letter to grimy 80s slasher movies. I had optimistic hopes in that regard. I love grimy 80s slasher movies. In the crowded world of horror comedies, Hell of a Summer, I'm going to lay my cards flat to a degree and then analyze after the fact. I think Hell of a Summer does manage to stand out, not because it reinvents the slasher wheel or anything, but because it so clearly and so earnestly loves the genre that it inhabits. Written and co-directed by Finn Wolfhard and Billy Brick, two actors making their directorial debuts, the film is a spirited, gory, and often charming homage to 1980s style horror films. It's funny in a relaxed, hangout kind of way, with a smart cast of young actors who are clearly having fun in their roles. The result is an enjoyable, if a little bit uneven, effort that demonstrates plenty of promise from its creators, even if it doesn't always stick the landing. Premiering at the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival, Hell of a Summer was picked up by distributor Neon for a modest theatrical run before becoming available on streaming. The film's modest box office return, reportedly just over $3 million dollars against an estimated $3 million production budget, that meager return is more reflective of its limited rollout in genre status than a lack of audience interest, I think. Among horror fans and festival goers, the film has developed a small but enthusiastic following. Many praise its irreverent humor, practical effects, and knowing winks to slasher classics like Friday the 13th or Scream. The film takes place at a summer camp, the most obvious of slasher settings, but the movie also wisely leans into the familiarity of this kind of setting than trying to subvert it entirely. The story follows a group of teenage camp counselors returning for the summer to prep the site ahead of campers arriving, and one by one, and you won't believe this, they begin to die at the hands of a masked killer. What sets the film apart is not the story, which is as boilerplate as they come, of course, but the tone. Hell of a Summer is deeply affectionate toward the genre without being overly cynical or too meta. The blood flows freely. The bodies pile up, and some of the main characters, however, I think, are drawn with a little more empathy and humor than is often expected for the genre, which was a nice surprise. Wolfhard, best known for his work on Stranger Things and things like Ghostbusters Afterlife, stars in the film alongside Brick, with both also sharing writing and directing duties. Their affection for the material is never in doubt. The dialogue is peppered with kind of absurd asides and teen angst, but it never really feels too forced. Instead, there's kind of a relaxed, sometimes almost improvisational rhythm to the interactions of the characters. In many ways, the film sometimes feels like a group of friends making the kind of movie they grew up loving, and that earnestness is part of the charm of the final piece. The cast features a mix of rising talent and familiar faces. Fred Heckinger of Craven the Hunter and Gladiator 2, what a disparity there, brings a shaggy, likable energy to his role, while actors like Abby Quinn and Matthew Finland both shine in supporting turns. Brick himself gets some of the film's funniest lines, and Wolfhard, he shows a willingness to play awkward and flawed, though I'm still not quite sure, just personally, that I am on board with Finn Wolfhard, the actor. I don't really think that throughout his numerous film appearances, I really have come to enjoy him as a performer at all. That's nothing against him. It's just maybe personal taste. Nothing against him. Again, he seems like a decent guy. There's no really singular standout performance in the film necessarily, but the ensemble does gel pretty nicely. And everyone is delivering performances that are heightened enough to fit the genre without slipping into outright parody. However, I've said some good things. Now I'm going to get into a little maybe not so good things. However, for a slasher, the film is not all that creepy. The kills are bloody, but they're rarely actually kind of scary. And the overall atmosphere leans more towards nostalgia than genuine suspense at any point. That's both a strength and a weakness, I guess you could say. Viewers who are expecting something chilling may leave disappointed, while those looking for just simply a good time with a side of gore and corn syrup they'll likely walk away satisfied, and that's totally fine. The humor, though mostly effective, can also kind of be hit or miss, if you ask me. There are stretches of dialogue that feel not forced, but a little too self aware, as if the film is trying to wink at the audience maybe once or twice too many times. Other jokes do land pretty squarely, especially when they are grounded in character rather than concept. Still, I think the laughs could have been more consistent overall. The screenplay occasionally like loses steam for very short periods, and the movie is already at a pretty brisk runtime. It's under 90 minutes long. Um, I just was hoping that I guess more of the jokes were A, coming at me faster, and B, hitting a little bit harder. And that doesn't mean that the film needs to be a parody. It doesn't mean it needs to sacrifice its homage kind of trimmings. But if you're marketing as a comedy, I want to be laughing a little bit more. That's nitpicking to a degree. Your mileage may vary. Comedy is subjective. That's my personal take. Critically, Hell of a Summer received like mixed but generally encouraging responses, and I guess I'm kind of in line there. A lot of the reviews, they praise the tone, cast, and the clear reverence for the sort of genre staples that they're employing here. While, detractors cited its lack of real tension and the inconsistent pacing, things that I also kind of mentioned. Viewers, though, I think are tend to be a little bit higher on things across the board than critics, especially when it comes to horror. And in my anecdotal experience, viewers kind of do see this movie as like a fresh voice in indie horror or indie horror comedy. And then there are also some people who think that like it's a good debut for directors who have never done this before, but it's a little bit forgettable and maybe they'll improve with time. I'm kind of in the middle on those opinions too. Um, I do think what's most notable, I guess, is how well Wolfhard and Brick understands the mechanics of slasher cinema. Even if the film stumbles here and there, it does so with the kind of affection that suggests the creators are fans first and maybe filmmakers second. And I mean that as a compliment. It may sound like a backhanded compliment, but in this case, I really don't mean it to be one. Too many horror comedies, I think, lean on pure irony to cover up a lack of like genuine interest in the genre. Hell of a Summer, by contrast, is, I think, deeply in love with the material that inspired it. It's filled with the kind of tropes that genre fans will recognize right away. A lot of dialogue about teen virginity and fooling around and hooking up. The masked killer reveal is kind of out of a lot of old slasher movies. There's also like a fake out death that's not actually a death. All of these things are used with sincerity that's hard to fake, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at there. So in the end, Hell of a Summer, I think it's more of a promising debut than a fully realized vision. It's funny, it's likable, it's gleefully gory at times, but it never quite, I think, becomes the sum of its parts. There are too many nits to pick for me to like across the board be in love with it. The atmosphere lacks a sort of eerie moodiness that great slashers thrive on, even ones that are tongue in cheek, even ones that do have humor. There are ones that still create good atmosphere. This doesn't quite rise to those levels. And the humor, it's present. It's not always sharp enough to carry the weight of the film's generally lighter tone. And I do think they've demonstrated a clear voice, a clear love for the genre, and a willingness to embrace both humor and horror with open arms. So that is commendable. As a piece of entertainment, Hell of a Summer delivers a good time, especially for horror buffs. As a debut, I think it also suggests better things to come. It might not be an instant classic, but I don't think it has to be. Sometimes a movie's biggest strength is how much fun it is in the moment. And on that front, Hell of a Summer absolutely delivers. For that reason, on my scale of A list, amazing, average, abysmal, or needs to be abolished, Hell of a Summer will be getting an average rating from me. It's a nice little 3-star slasher that I think horror heads will definitely eat up nicely. I saved $10.99 on this ticket by seeing the film with AMC A List. I say this not because I'm sponsored by A List, which I am not, but because I plan to tally up my A List savings at the end of 1 year to see if it's actually worth having. Saving $11 on a new horror movie in theaters is just fine by my standards, so I have no complaints there. But did you see Hell of a Summer, and what did you think of it if you did? And I'd also love to know, who is your favorite slasher villain? I do like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, but I always have been a Freddy guy at heart. I love that he talks trash before he kills people. He's part stand-up comic, and I really, really love him for that. Welcome to Prime Time. B word is like just such an iconic one-liner. It just rings in my head ever since I saw it as a teenager. But feel free to answer any and all of those questions in the comments down below, and feel free to like this video and or subscribe to the channel for thoughts on more recent movies as they hit streaming or current movies as they come to theaters. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, maybe don't sign up to be a counselor at a summer camp. I feel like you might get to hook up with other counselors, but you are also very likely to get axe murdered. It's more likely to be Friday the 13th than Wet Hot American Summer, I think, and that's not a coin flip I want to make. Not a great trade-off. Anyway, stay safe. Bye.